folks, you see another Canadian. I've had two Canadians on my show tonight. You're the second one.
Is
This is
is that
fun.
right? Who else were you talking
Well,
to?
he's a film producer out of Winnipeg, Manitoba. I don't know if you've seen or heard of the new documentary put out in October called After Death. Stephen
I ha
Gray's name. And
okay.
excellent film. You want to see the film. And I did repost our raw and unedited interview just now on Facebook. So we're going to trim that and put it on YouTube shortly. But yeah,
Right on.
we're from Manitoba all the way to Prince Edward Island. Folks, this is Dennis Ellsworth. And Dennis is a musician, songwriter, um, sideman, performer, record producer. I'm going to, from his website, www.dennisellsworth.com, from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which is an island, but also a province of Canada all by itself. His
Yeah,
songwriting career started in high school, filling notebooks with lyrics and poems. And he grew up on the Beatles. I love this, Dennis, that you just had such an eclectic taste for music. Simon and Garfunkel, love Simon and Garfunkel. Ray Charles, Chris Christopherson, Roy Orbison, the old Willie Nelson. I think he's still
yeah.
kicking, right? But Merle Haggard just passed away a couple of years ago. I loved his music. Dennis's taste evolved in grade 6, and he began collecting cassettes. Some of you are old enough, raise your hand. Remember the cassettes? And when it messed up, you took your pen and kind of made sure that you, rotated it back in so all the ribbon would be in there.
That's
uh,
right.
yeah, Dennis's personal music collection is stylistically expansive. Some might call his love for music an addiction, but whatever. It's okay. That's a good addiction. Over the years, he's
I
collaborated with
agree.
Josh Finlayson, Andy Mays from Sky Diggers, Gord Downey from the Tragically Hip. I love that name of a band there. Joel
Mm,
Plaskett, Donovan Woods, Rose Cousins, John Smith, and David Barber, a producer of Drive-By Truckers and bass player for
yeah.
the alternative rock band Sugar. In 2015, Dennis signed a publishing deal with Simba Records out of Toronto, and a lot of his music has appeared on TV shows for CBC, Netflix, HBO, and the award-winning film I haven't seen. I need to see this. The New Romantic. Dennis has two
Hmm.
albums with his previous group, Haunted Hearts, an album as a duo with Kinley Dowling, two EPs, and 10 full-length solo albums, including the most recent triple album project called Bound by Love. And I want to talk about that too. How do you do a triple album project? And how much I enjoyed the song Bound by Love. How did we get to know Dennis? How did we even connect? People sometimes want to know that. And real briefly, because I don't know that I was able to tell you, Dennis, are you with us? There, he went out for a minute. You're back. I think there was a glitch there for a minute.
I disappeared.
Yeah. We were watching one of my favorite shows on TV, favorite show of a lot of people's. They're now in the 17th season, Heartland. And we heard the single, I think it was Hazy Summer, something like that, Hazy Sunshine.
That's
And I
right.
thought, wow, that's a good one. I want to put that on my Spotify. I put a number of artists from the Heartland soundtrack on my Spotify, Mark Barber, a few others, but that song really got me. And they do a really good job of picking, first of all, a homegrown talent from Canada, which I'm sure makes you
Hmm.
guys all proud and promotes the Canadian brand, which maybe you could talk about what's unique about the Canadian brand. And just the quality of songs that fit the particular narrative of that specific episode. So we'll get into that. Dennis, was it always a dream of yours to play and perform as more or less of a full-time gig growing up?
Yeah, it was actually. As
Cool.
far back as I can remember.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was always listening to music, and I was always the one singing songs when the adults were around looking for some cheap entertainment.
Yeah.
I was the kid with the plastic guitar singing "Forever in Blue Jeans."
Oh, yeah.
Just
Wow. It's a great line.
doing whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's I don't really know like when I decided that I would actually try and do it, but
Mhm.
it was in me from the start. So
Yes.
it's it's an organic thing.
Transformation. Yeah. So
Yeah,
to speak.
exactly.
And you learned to play the guitar fairly young. And did you cover, like, try to copy some of the cassettes and the albums you were playing at the time and what you heard on the radio?
Do you know what? The reason I learned or taught myself how to play guitar was so that I could write my own songs, not so that I could play other people's songs.
Yeah, that's good.
So when
Rare.
I didn't really spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to play other people's songs. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't trying to figure out how to play Crazy Train or Sweet Child of Mine or
Yeah,
something like that. I was more concerned with trying to figure out how to use this instrument to complement my ideas for songwriting. So
that's
that's
interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
So some of those artists that you mentioned on your website are probably maybe more or less subconsciously led to the style that you began to have as an amalgam of all those different kinds of influences. Now, I've asked this to a number of musicians that we've had on, anything from bluegrass to contemporary Christian music and country. Do the lyrics come to you before the melody, or is it sort of a combination?
Oh, there's never a sequence
No, there isn't.
that's there's never a consistent sequence. It could be one way one time and the other way the next time. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, sometimes I've just sort of heard something in my head when I was walking around town,
Yeah.
and got my cell phone, made a quick voice memo of the
Uh-huh.
melody idea, and when I got home, started working on it. So
Uh,
sometimes a melody pops into my head. Most times it happens simultaneously where I'll
mhm.
sit down trying to write something. I'll have a guitar in my hand and I'll just start, you know,
Mhm.
finding my way. I
Yeah.
that or something will start coming from me because
Yeah.
it always feels like the when I do write something, it's because something is coming through me. It's like
Yeah.
it's a
Right. Right in the gut. Yeah. Of the heart.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
organic.
that's
That's natural.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I hardly ever sit down and try to force a song out.
Yeah.
If I have to do that, it's usually a co-write for somebody else. It's never
Okay.
going to be
Right.
something that I'm going to sing.
Right.
Um, but for
May-
my own stuff, it's always some organic process.
Yeah. And even if you maybe get partway through, get a little stuck, maybe you put it on that back burner and come back to it, and the rest of it sort of blossoms out of you, or maybe you get it all at once. It's always a process.
Yeah, it happens both ways for
Okay.
me.
That's
Sometimes I can write a song in 10 minutes,
hmm.
and sometimes it takes me 10 months to finish a song
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I feel like there's
I'll
this
get some
point
time.
in the process where if I don't get it fast,
Mhm.
then I know it's going to be something that I have to work and
Yeah.
work and work at.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That process is okay with me too. I don't have a problem
Yeah.
with
That's good.
spending time with a song because
Sure.
sometimes that's what it needs.
Yeah. And maybe I was just going to ask you, what is it sort of random? And the answer to this question perhaps is rhetorical too, going along with how you just described that process is that maybe there's really no set pattern or formula. And maybe some of the songs that you've had more success with really doesn't fit any kind of formula. They could be the long-term hard labor ones or the ones that come to you all of a sudden. One might
Hmm.
think that the ones that come to you quickly would end up being the more successful ones, but not necessarily so.
Yeah, I mean, who knows
Yeah,
how a song gets a life? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Um, in the case of Hazy Sunshine, for
yeah.
instance,
Talk about that.
that that song has a lot of it gets a lot of attention because of the Heartland
Sure.
appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in the show Heartland, there's an emotion in the song, and
Yeah,
where they placed it in the episode,
yeah,
it just it was a perfect confluence of
yeah.
film and song, and it doesn't always work that way.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
I don't ever have an answer for that kind of
No.
stuff.
Yeah.
It is what it is. A song lives
Yeah.
without it has its own life. It'll take its own path sometimes, and that
That's
kind of
cool.
happened with Hazy Sunshine.
That's
That
cool.
one, there's a very poetic song. The lyrics are very poetic in that
Yeah.
song. um I would bet that mostly I'm the only one who knows what I'm talking about in that song.
Yeah,
But
yeah, it
you
fit.
know, it felt right, and it was
Uh-huh.
very visual. It was a very visual lyric.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So,
you know, that one took that one was probably like an hour. I wrote that
mhm.
song in an hour.
Wow. Did it
Yeah.
surprise you when they contacted you to use it for the show, that particular episode?
Um,
Was it
well,
nothing
I
planned?
wouldn't say surprised. I was pleased
Yeah.
because, it was my publisher
Okay.
who did
Yeah.
that work.
Mhm.
And it was never a song that I thought would get that kind of placement, but
Yep.
it is cinematic, and it fits, it works. But it wasn't one of those obvious ones where somebody said, "Oh, what are your standout songs on this
Right.
album?" I
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have said that song,
Interesting.
even even
Yeah.
though, like sonically it is one of my favorites on that
Uh-huh.
record, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so I don't know. Everybody's got their own
Yeah.
reasons and opinions on this stuff. That's what
Yeah.
makes art so wonderful.
Exactly, because you can't pigeonhole it, and you wouldn't want to because then it becomes artificial, not as
Yeah,
disingenuous. So, in the writing process of anything, were you already a writer of poems? I think you mentioned it on your website, and then the music came after, and just always maybe journaling, diary, kind of just thoughts coming, and you got to put them down on paper. Did that kind of?
I was never somebody who wrote like I didn't ever keep a diary or a journal.
Mhm.
I still don't
Yeah.
actually. Um, but my diary or my journal, I guess, is my lyrics.
Mhm.
Those are I release those to the
Yeah.
public, so
Right. Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
that secret.
Yeah.
But what you said about poems, I was kind of more. I was writing poems. You could call them poems, but they
Mhm.
were intended to be lyrics.
Okay.
It's just that I didn't play
Didn't
an
know it at the
instrument at
time.
that time.
Yeah. Right.
Um, I was doing it in high school because it was just something that was naturally coming
Sure.
from me. I was bored in class, probably. Um,
Yeah.
and at one point in time, in one of my classes, some of the guys that were close to me in the classroom noticed what I was doing and said, "Do you sing?" And
Uh,
I said, "No, I've never sung before." I mean, I can sing. I think I can sing, but I've never sung in public before.
uh-huh.
And they said, "Well, do you want to get together and jam?
Wow. So
Because
that
we see what you're doing here, and
sure.
like we're looking for somebody to sing in this band." So I
Ah,
said, "Sure." That was in grade 10. I was in grade 10 art class. And that's kind of where I started singing. And that band, we just it was a garage band. We were
yeah.
having fun.
Yeah.
But that's where I realized I really
Go for
am
it.
pretty good at this.
Yeah.
And
And that,
I'm gonna see where this takes me.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Out of all my friends that I played music with over the years too, from
Uh-huh.
like from that period, I'm the only one that's still
Still doing it.
doing it
Yeah.
professionally.
Interesting. So
So,
where was your next stop after that? How did you continue to pursue your music and I guess call your calling to that? Um, from
well,
you know,
I moved to Edmonton, Alberta, when I was 18 years old,
mhm.
and I took a job in a factory, and I bought a 4-track recorder, and we had a basement apartment. We just, we were just kids, but
Yes.
we were having fun. When I moved back from Edmonton, I went to university, and in my first year university, was it first year or second year? It was 1998, so it would have been like halfway through my first year.
Okay.
Um, I reconnected with some people that played in a different band at the time of that band I just talked about it from
Oh,
high school,
uh-huh.
and we formed a band in university, and we started touring, and
Oh.
we played the circuit, the university circuit at the time
Hmm.
in Canada. And then we moved to Toronto in 2001 when we all graduated from university.
Hmm.
And that was kind of like a first real try to be a professional musician.
Hmm.
And I started writing a lot more songs at that period. Um, and then that band broke up, and I made a solo record when I lived in Toronto.
Okay.
in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
2006, I made a solo record, and then I moved back to Prince Edward Island and started another band called Haunted Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until around 2012 that I decided I was going to try and make a
Right.
living doing
Yeah,
this.
sure. Uh-huh.
You know, I was trying, I would say, but I always had
Yeah.
a job.
Right.
In
Sure.
2012, I was working in kitchens as a chef,
Mm-hmm.
and I hated it. I really didn't like it very much. So I had this connection to David Barbie in Athens, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
I had been down there previously with another band, and we recorded 4 songs. And David and I hit it off. We have a lot of similar tastes in music. We're both
Mhm.
big baseball fans.
Yeah.
Um, so I sent him a message from the line in the kitchen that day, and I said,
Yeah.
I want to come to make a record in Georgia with
Uh-huh.
you whenever you're free.
Yeah.
And he said, well, how about the fall? And I said, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I was doing a seasonal job. And at the end of that season, I said to the person who I was working for, I said, I'm not coming back. I'm
Yeah.
done
Take a leap
doing
of faith, huh?
kitchens.
Yeah.
And I took a leap of faith.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I've been doing it that way ever since. And
That's
you know, periodically I'll get a little job here. I'll
mhm.
do something every now and again just to take my mind off of the music business.
Sure.
Um, but ultimately, I'm still doing it. I'm
That's
still
great.
here trying to make it work, you know,
Yeah. So
writing.
your venues are mostly across Canada. Do you ever get into the States and where in particular?
I've played in the States,
Hmm.
but you know, the visa situation for a Canadian musician to go into the States is arduous and
Really?
expensive.
Uh,
Yeah, and the US government actually just made it more expensive. So I think for one person to cross the border to play shows where I would make any money or be
yeah.
paid in US dollars, I would have to put up about $2,000 Canadian
Seriously. Wow.
before
That's
I
yeah, because it's probably
before I
not that
even
way with us going over to your side, right?
no, it's
No.
not.
Yeah.
But
Sorry.
so because of that,
Mm.
I don't play in the States very often.
No.
I
Yeah.
played some showcases in the States, like
Uh-huh.
there was an event in Kansas City. I played um, a songwriting show in New York City at the Lincoln Center.
Oh, really?
You know,
Great.
like
Yeah.
a couple of things here and
Yeah.
there, but
Right.
nothing in terms of a tour.
Uh-huh.
Most of my touring was in Europe, England, Europe, Canada.
Wow. Awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
So we need to change that, I guess, our government. And there's a lot of things about
Uh,
the government, but because I mean, I just know, again, not to go back to Heartland as the show, but the music I've been exposed to, and we're always trying to listen to something new, my wife and I. Um,
mhm.
but there is a lot of talent in Canada, and
Oh,
it's a huge,
that's for sure.
and I like people to get to know it, you know.
Hmm.
If you had to, as I mentioned earlier, wanted to kind of maybe describe, if you can, if there is such a thing as the Canadian sound, or is it just as varied as wherever else? What do people listen to in Canada? Because some of the stuff that it, again, is on those soundtracks, and there's several of them that people have cobbled together from the music they've had in the episodes. Just, I don't know, it's just, I would say for me, folksy, ethereal. It just has this some of it autobiographical, sounds like it would be. I mean, I mentioned the Bound by Love that you did. I was listening to that earlier, and I just love the video of it. Um, just I don't know, it just touches me in a way that a lot of music doesn't. So
Hmm.
I don't know if that's an apt description, or if there's a way you could describe the music in Canada, or just people like anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one particular sound, but I
Right.
do like in terms of the songwriters, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the music that you're referring to. Um, I do feel like there is a lot of really great rootsy songwriters in
Mm.
Canada.
Good way to put it. Yeah.
There's a lot of great songwriters in Canada, period.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's a lot of really talented musicians
Mm.
and record producers, and we've got some world-class studios in Canada, you know.
Oh, that's great.
So, you know, we're a big place with a lot of people. And I mean, living in the north living in this climate. Like, I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah,
It could,
yeah,
but I mean,
yeah.
eh,
It's
I can't really put my finger
yeah,
on a
right.
sound. I can't even tell you what I sound like, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
right.
Like, I'm not that great at articulating or boxing myself in.
No, that's probably a
Um,
good thing. We don't want to label. Sometimes labels they serve a purpose, but they're sometimes too simplistic.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I feel like I dabble in different
Mhm.
sounds. I'm not
Sure.
just one way.
Yeah.
So it's not something I like to do. But I really couldn't say. I mean, you mentioned the Tragically Hip earlier.
Mhm. Yes.
They're a rock band from
Mhm.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Um, they are probably one of the most popular bands in Canada.
Cool.
They have been. They're not a
Uh-huh.
band anymore because their lead singer passed away a few years
Mhm.
ago.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of Canada's band,
Mhm.
that would be them.
Yeah.
And a US equivalent to the Tragically Hip in terms of sound, I would say would
Mhm.
be like REM. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, if you ask somebody, a Canadian, who's Canada's band, they would
Right.
probably, even if they didn't like the Tragically Hip, they
Yeah.
would probably say the Tragically Hip. They're
Yeah.
just that popular, you know.
Cool.
They would play a 500 to 2,000 capacity room in the States,
Hmm.
or in Europe, but they would play 25,000 seat
Wow.
arenas in Canada.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah, they're a huge band
Yeah.
for Canada.
Huh.
Um, and
Interesting.
a lot of times there's speculation as to why they never really broke through in the U.S. And there's some political reasons and some major label issues there.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
the U.S. major label didn't ever really push the band as
Mm.
well as the Canadian label did. But
Yeah.
um, the lyricist in that band, who was a huge influence on me and ended up becoming a friend of mine
Oh,
before
cool.
he passed away.
Yeah.
um, he wrote a lot about Canada. he
Uh-huh.
he, he wrote he didn't write about Canada. He wrote about the pride of being Canadian,
Yeah.
but he also pointed his finger, and he I don't know, he just balanced it. It was great.
That's cool.
And I there's a lot of references in the music of the Tragically Hip that most people in other countries don't get.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe that's partly
Maybe
why
that's
they
part
didn't
of it.
break through. But
Yeah.
I don't truly believe that. I mean, they do have quite a large fan base around the world. So,
Yeah.
but they're not a household name, and
Yeah.
they should have been.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess
but
in the end, you've got to be who you are, be true to yourself, and not worry about pleasing everybody, I guess.
well,
You
to be yeah, if I had to say what makes someone like yourself hear a sound out of
know?
Canada, it
Mhm.
would probably be that. It would
Yeah,
probably be that I think most of us are just trying to be organically ourselves, and
exactly.
not
For
and
sure.
not try to be
Yeah.
whatever we think everybody wants.
I
Um,
appreciate that you sharing that. And I guess when you hear something you like to try. It's just the human nature to try to put it like, where did I hear that? Because I even thought I might hear in your vocals like strains of David Bowie. I mean, just different, but you don't know that. I don't think that anybody purposely does that. But we enjoy it so much that I think sometimes people have a tendency to try to and just instead of just enjoy it. So talk to me
yeah.
about Bound by Love, and what does it mean that that was a trio kind of a project for you?
Oh, that was well, during COVID. So when
Mhm.
we locked down in Canada, that was around March, like third, fourth week of March.
Uh-huh.
Um, I basically started. I had this new setup at home where I could record demos. I was lucky to have it at the time,
Mhm.
because if
Yeah.
I didn't, I would have been much less productive. But
Right.
I started writing a lot. Obviously, I was fueled by this global pandemic.
Hmm.
The content, and or my train of thought was constantly going there. And I had a young kid. She was only one. and a bit at the time.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I just wrote a lot of songs
Mm.
in that period.
Mm.
I had started something prior to COVID. It was
Mhm.
it was like I just did a recording session to see if I had anything good coming out of me,
Mhm.
and a lot of it was left unfinished.
Mm.
So when COVID happened, it gave me a chance to finish that stuff.
That's great.
But then I also wrote a lot of songs during that period, that initial period.
Mm.
Um, and then I tried to do something on the third album of that trilogy. I tried to write a song a day and then keep the sequence of how I like. So I wrote the songs
Mm.
in the order they appear on
Sure.
the album, and I
Mhm.
wrote them over. There's 10 songs on the album. I wrote them over a 10-day period. So
Yeah.
I wrote a song a day for 10 days,
Uh-huh.
and then that was the record. And I tried to record it as fast as I could.
Uh-huh.
And when I because COVID had shut everything down, no touring was happening. Uh, it
Right.
hardly felt it hardly felt like a good idea to start trying to release music and promote it.
Right.
Um, but then I didn't really know, like, how long are we going to be in this shit? How long do we have to sit through COVID?
Yeah.
So I better figure out how to release all this music I've recorded. And
Yeah.
then I thought the only real way that I can do this, because I don't want to stagger it to
Yeah.
like over this long period of time.
Yeah.
So I had this plan to release the trilogy over, I think, over 4 months.
Mhm.
So we put one album out, and then
Another.
uh, 6 weeks later or 8 weeks later we put out another one, and then 8 weeks later we put out another one. So within 4 months I released all of this music that I had made. Um, yeah, and then I had nothing. I was sort
Yeah.
of emptied out
Your
for a
brain had,
while.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It take a
Yeah,
break, like a little bit of a
but
pause.
that's
Yeah.
that's how that came about. I mean, it came about because I had so much time on my hands.
Mhm.
If I didn't have all that time on my hands, I probably wouldn't have done something crazy, or like release 3 albums in 4 months. But
Right. Exactly.
it seemed like at that point the rules were over. We could
Yeah.
do whatever we wanted
Yeah.
in the business. So
Yeah.
we did. So I did.
Yeah.
Um, and actually right after that, as soon as COVID started to chill out a little bit, I put another band together called the Money Go Round, and I made an
Oh,
album with that band.
well, that's great.
So yeah, so I was quite productive during that period. And
Now
I'm
you still
still,
with them? Do you still work with that band?
uh-huh,
You
yeah,
still, yeah, good. Good.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I've just got another record um, coming out, or it's out. It's out now, but it
Mhm.
hasn't been on streaming yet. It'll be out on streaming in March 9th, I think. Um, and I've already started working on two other records. So the
Oh,
momentum that I started
yeah.
during COVID has stuck around.
That's great. Wow. So
Yeah,
people can get your music off Pandora, Spotify, Apple Music.
yeah,
Uh,
it's on all of those.
yeah, awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
And you have a YouTube site where people can subscribe. Um, I wanted to mention too and ask you this. I don't really know if there's a term. If there is, I think I had a buddy who he writes his own stuff. He plays piano and guitar, 12 string, lives in New York. Then when I mentioned this to him, there was a term in his songwriting classes and when he goes to some of these workshops and so forth, where a song is felt, even instrumentally, and you feel the song, and whether the lyrics come later or not, it's almost like I don't know how to, it's like this divine miracle is all I can think. And the example
Yeah.
I have to give, and maybe you can point to whether you've had this happen to you specifically, but the great documentarian Ken Burns, who did the Civil War, and he's done baseball, and he recently did
Jazz.
a country
He
music
did the
one, which is
jazz.
fabulous.
Yeah.
He does
Yeah,
great
that is
work.
amazing.
Yeah, well, you must be familiar with Jay Unger and Molly Madison, who did Ashcon Farewell. Um,
Hmm.
the history of that song before they put Sullivan Blues' last letter he wrote to his wife to the music of that in the film, just hearing the music, like and I had this experience myself just hearing it first time. I'm like, I wept and I didn't know what I was weeping about. People said
Hmm.
they heard that on the radio, or maybe they put it in the CD at the time. I don't know what CD or cassette when a Civil War came out, but they had to stop on the side of the road because they were so overcome with emotion. And this is before I guess, before they knew about the Sullivan Balloon letter, or that it wasn't even part of the Civil War, but the two fit like hand in glove. And it was like you
Hmm.
could almost feel, your soul could almost feel that's what that was supposed to be for. I thought the music was written back then, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a term for that as a songwriter. If you've ever had that happen to you, you know of people, songs like that have kind of really gotten a hold of you, where like you emotionally felt it, and then maybe later you're like, wow, that makes sense.
Oh, I mean, there's certainly songs that just make me well up.
Hmm.
Um, you know,
Just the sound of
they're
it
out
before you
there.
even see the lyric.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
How
there's
they
an
go together.
emotion. It's the emotion in the song, or
Right.
it's
Yeah.
and you know, it is a timing thing as well.
Mm.
Sometimes for me anyway, you know, it doesn't always hit me that way, but
Mm.
depending on how I'm feeling,
Yeah.
you know, it seems like the stars have to line up for that
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
happen.
Yes.
Um, but it's a pretty magical thing when it does happen.
It is a
When
magical
you when
thing.
you
Yeah.
when you feel music at that like at that heightened state or that
Uh-huh.
level of emotion,
Yes.
um,
So,
it's an intense thing,
uh-huh.
and it's a wonderful thing.
I only wish that I was capable, but I know from DJing and just loving all kinds of music all my life, I know it when I hear it. Another example for me, and being a pastor, I actually used this song for a funeral song. I asked the folks, of course, and it just seemed to fit. But Foy Vance and Ed Sheeran on Guiding
Oh
Light,
yeah, yeah.
unbelievable song. I didn't know anything about Foy Vance. He's Irish, and he's got
Hmm.
quite a gig following. But Ed Sheeran and he got together and they did this song. And the original video they did with it is just so powerful, and it spoke to that. I don't know that they meant it for uh, to remember your loved one at a funeral, a celebration of life, but it certainly goes along with that. But wow, what a powerful tune! And you feel it just as the song takes off. Like
Hmm.
when you're in an airplane, you know where you're going and you're so excited, whether you're going to Hawaii or we just went to Ireland this last summer and it was a trip of a lifetime. So the excitement,
Amazing.
anticipation of being on that plane is kind of
Hmm.
like sometimes a song will do that. And so I think you
Hmm.
know what I mean. It's just hard to kind of pigeonhole or label that, but it's a cool thing.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing, and
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to articulate for sure,
Yeah.
because it feels like you're swept away, you
Yeah.
know,
It does.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very emotional thing, and it's
Yeah.
intense, and I don't know, I honestly don't think most people would be able to put it into
No,
words, and I
maybe
think
that's a
that's
good thing.
what's
Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing.
I do too. It's
Yeah.
weird because of all the arts, and I love all the arts, visual, painting, whatever. Done some of that. That was my minor in college. But it seems like music, and not to say it's a better thing or anything, but it unites us. Music. I mean, look at the Jewish people. They memorized their whole history with song. Part of it's because they were
I
largely
know.
educated, but and agrarian in their, But I mean, music really ties us together, and it's that common denominator that I think we can all relate to one another. Hey, and I guess grounds us and connects us.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful thing. So we
It really
appreciate your
is.
music. Yeah. So what is your next project? Do you hope that
Uh,
Heartland connects back with you, or you just got other gigs and venues that's keeping you so busy?
Yeah, I got things going on.
Yeah. Cool.
I have another young child now too. So
Cool.
I'm yeah, now I
Busy
have
with
two
that.
kids,
Yeah.
and so I have a 5-year-old girl and a boy who's 15 months old. So
Oh, wow.
it's keeping me it's
Yeah.
keeping me close to home for
That's good.
now.
That's good.
Um, but I have some things in the works. I have lots of music made, and I do have you know some shows to play this year.
Yeah.
I've kind of taken it slow, but
Yeah.
every time every time I make a record, my
Mhm.
publisher he spends some time trying to find some homes out
Yeah.
there for the songs
Good.
on the album. So who
Good.
knows? I
Yeah.
mean, Heartland may bite again.
Yeah.
They're
They-
always asking us,
Yeah, that's
um,
cool.
but
That's
I
cool.
don't know. I don't know. We've only had the one,
Yeah.
um, but
How
you know,
often did you perform in around PEI? We're coming up, we're coming home to Maine, and I've never been to Prince Edward Island. My whole family and friends have. But we're
yeah.
planning to, now that we have our passport, we would like to come up, and we're in June, right? Middle of June and July. So
Okay.
maybe we'll come up your way. I don't know if you'll be there performing, but we'd love to take in one of your gigs.
Middle of July.
Middle of July.
July. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I got a pretty busy schedule, but it's
Mhm.
doing some other stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm playing my own shows in July around here, but
Yeah.
it's only February, so
Right.
you know,
You never know.
a local show comes up, and it's easy for me to do. It
Sure.
doesn't
Yeah.
require any travel, so
Right.
I'll just say yes. But um,
Yeah.
well, so where are you now? You said you're in
We're
Maine?
in Michigan, right? And
Oh, you're in Michigan right
yeah, I
now.
grew up and was born and raised in down East Maine. We would cross the border into St. Stephen's. We used to love to go up into St. John. We had a lot of
Yeah.
church connections up in there. And of course,
Hmm.
we love St. Andrews by the Sea, the
Oh,
Algonquin.
that's an amazing place.
Amazing place. So much of Canada.
Yeah.
I remember the Canadian weather guy. He worked for a Maine TV station, Dutch Hazard, and he would talk about the Maritimes. And I remember the commercials. Come feel our warmth. Come on over.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're growing up digging clams. I always wondered what was the clamming like in Canada. So whenever I go over there, I try to find some fellow clam diggers. But at any rate,
Well, there's lots of that here in Prince Edward Island.
is there really? Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, lots of
it's
clam
great. I grew
diggers.
up. It's the best part-time job a young fella can have. We didn't
Yeah.
get money. We didn't have to.
We're
We were our own bosses too. So.
hmm Well,
Mhm.
we have a big fishery. We have a big fishery industry here. I mean,
Cool.
we're surrounded by water. A
Yep.
lobster fishery,
Yep.
is a
Same with
big one
us.
here.
Yeah.
Same with Maine. So,
Yeah. Yeah. We
yeah,
do a
I
lot
mean,
of the
there's probably
scallops. So
you would probably feel at home
at
here.
home. Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember my dad and uncle went years ago, and on a weekend he came back and I said, what was it like? I just wanted to go with him, and they just did this guy thing. I was probably 15. He said, oh, it's just like home. I'm like, if it's just like home, it's good. So of course we all
Yeah,
know about Anne of Green Gables and that whole thing
exactly. Yeah.
there. So yeah. So should I take the bridge or the boat? I guess they both have.
Both.
Yeah, maybe
Take
we'll
them,
do that one way.
take
Yeah,
one over. And here's my advice:
yeah.
take the boat, take the boat to Prince Edward Island,
Okay,
and take and leave by the bridge,
okay.
because the boat is nice. It's really nice to come into Prince Edward Island on the boat,
Okay.
visually,
Yep.
but it's also about $15 or $20 cheaper than leaving Prince Edward Island by bridge.
Ah,
So
so
if you
yeah.
left by the boat, you'd have to pay about $80, but
Uh-huh.
leaving by the bridge is only about 57 or 58,
I
$60,
see.
something like that.
Okay.
So
Well,
you
I
save
appreciate it.
$20.
Good. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Well,
no
listen,
problem.
I don't know if you're comfortable with this, but if you've got any needs, we usually like to say a little prayer at the end of our show. And I pray for you and your young ones and your family, and that God will bless you and your music and so forth. And maybe we'll connect when you come up. We'll exchange. Maybe you could email me his contact and see if you're playing around.
100%. Yeah,
Okay.
just let me know.
Sure.
Give me some heads up when you're coming,
Sure.
and
Do that.
I'll send you my info. So, well, you
Excellent.
kind of got it already, but it'd be
Yeah.
great to meet you in person.
That'd be great, Dennis. All right. Well, let's say a
Okay,
prayer. Thank you so much for
sounds
our
good.
time together with Dennis, Lord, tonight. I pray that your blessing upon him as he raises these two kids, and he's on the road music and all of the music that he produces, Lord, and putting the pen to the paper and getting the melodies. And Lord, that you just bless his life. And thank you so much for our connection tonight. We pray a blessing upon him and his family. And thank you for our time together. And we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
All right. God
Thanks,
bless you,
Ralph.
buddy. We'll be in
You too,
touch. And
man.
I'll send you a copy of this. I'm going to go back. It usually takes me a day or two to trim it up. And I'll send you the YouTube copy.
Okay, sounds
All right.
great.
God bless.